Hi everyone, this is Eagle News. I'm Ralph Cornell in Washington. It's the last Saturday of the month, May 28, 2022, here in the nation's capital. Our coverage begins now. 4 days after the elementary school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, investigation surrounding the tragedy continues. Authorities are trying to figure out every detail on how the events unfolded. What went wrong? What could have been done to stop it sooner? With 21 people killed, 19 of whom are children, how are people responding to yet another heartbreaking event? Jane Kathleen Gregario reports.
This week, the country lost 19 young lives during an elementary school shooting in Uvalde, Texas. 2 of their teachers were not spared either. Their deaths, many say, are senseless and could have been avoided. But how do we really make sense of this tragedy? A tragedy many blame on weak gun control laws, others on mental health issues. Our teams asked individuals here in Texas and in other cities across the country about how they feel after another unfortunate event took the lives of more than a dozen innocent persons, most of whom were just 10 years old.
I later learned during the day that I had extended family that knew people whose children were affected by this tragedy. And that's when reality for me hit home as a grandmother, that I didn't have to raise my children in this kind of fear. I was blessed not to have to do it either, but yet this is a reality that my grandchildren will face every day moving forward if something's not changed.
I don't feel comfortable because my daughter's supposed to be going to school this coming fall, and now I don't even feel comfortable sending her to school. I'd rather just put her into homeschool with me. At least she's more safe, and I know that she'll come back home to me.
America, unfortunately, is number one in the world in regards to violence brought upon with gun violence, and something needs to be done about it. Really does. But so much gun violence is promoted through the culture, through the movies, So there's a lot that you can point a finger at.
These are supposed to be like the best times of your school year. It's at the end when you're celebrating. And unfortunately, those teachers and those students that survived that tragedy, they won't remember the success that they had, or what achievements that they accomplished, or the friendships and relationships that they built with one another. They'll always connect the school year that ended in tragedy.
Innocent children who have no idea what's happening. It's horrific what has occurred. I'm not sure exactly what the answer is in the future.
First learned of the school shooting in Uvalde, Texas. I didn't really think of it at much at first, because unfortunately tragic events such as this happen on such a regular basis now that you just become desensitized to it. But upon learning that it involved 2 teachers and 19 fourth graders, and the manner in which they were just brutally and senselessly slaughtered, really struck a nerve with me as a parent, because I myself have a 4th grader. And to think that these innocent young children, their lives were cut short, it ended before their lives even got started. But only in the United States that something like this happens. I mean, you go to school to learn, not expecting that, you could potentially get killed by gunfire. But I think it's time for Congress, the president, to wake up and pass some sort of legislation.
Being a technology and security and surveillance company, I believe first and foremost, it starts at home, but also we need to start emphasizing much better security, probably some funding or programs to where everybody can work together to kind of help on the expansion of the technology, which could be avoided with something as simple as whether camera, body sensors, or locks.
We do this drill as much as we can, but when it really happens, you don't know what's really going to happen. And as a teacher, you're with these kids every day, and all you want to do is protect them. All you want to do is help them. And I know that there's some teachers who gave up their life to help these kids.
I have 4 young children myself, and as a teacher, all I can see when I look at the desk in my room, I'm just seeing the massacre that happened with those kids.
I believe it is a political issue that should be resolved, in which there should be more gun control and there should be more laws to ensure that an 18-year-old does not have a weapon of mass destruction.
A solution, I think, personally moving forward, is having some off-duty police officers available that can react with any force necessary to take down a predator.
This country has way too many school shootings. This is the only country where you hear this consistently. This is something that the higher ups need to look at and have better gun control.
I know how hard it is to lose a child because I have lost a child myself. Not in that tragic way, but just losing a child is enough to just kind of change your life forever. And my heart goes out to these parents.
Especially we have a second grader that, that you send them to school knowing that you'll pick them up, and I can't really imagine how those parents feel that they heard the news that there's a shooting in their school, their kids' school, and then their kids are one of those who didn't make it alive.
They really need to put some laws pertaining to guns or guns that are sold to young children still. The person that did the shooting was only 18 years old, and at that age they're still really too young to and not mature enough to handle that big responsibility of holding a weapon.
Moving forward, I think as someone who has studied human behavior, that we need to increase our awareness of mental health in general and look for the warning signs before they begin. A lot of times prevention is the best measure in handling these types of severe situations.
Uvalde is about 80 miles from us, so it's really close to home. And when we heard the news, it was devastating. We hear this news all around the world, and it's something that we don't want to become numb to. We always think about that, but then when we heard it was here in Uvalde, close to San Antonio, Texas, I think it really hit home even more.
I grew up in a small town, Kerrville, Texas, which is about 2 hours from Uvalde, and I played sports in middle school and high school, and we would travel there and play against Uvalde on the weekends. So I have lots of memories of Uvalde, and now being a parent, it really broke my heart knowing that those families had to say goodbye to their little ones and their loved ones.
The safety of the children, whether it's elementary, middle school, high school. So I think the security in the schools would probably be number one. There should be a set system on how anybody can enter or exit the building. The doors should always remain locked.
In the coming days, we will witness politicians, lobbyists, community leaders debate, present their positions, argue, so that another killing spree, especially in a school, will not happen again. What parents and children are asking for, however, is that those in power be moved into action and agree once and for all to come up with a solution to this problem plaguing the country for too long now. Jane Kathleen Gregorio, Eagle News, Corpus Christi, Texas.
Thanks, Kathleen. The 51st edition of the World Economic Forum has wrapped up in Davos, Switzerland. It's the first in-person meeting since the pandemic. Last year's summit was done virtually. This year's gathering was different. There were COVID tests, but no snow, and no Russian delegation. Mala Simbulan reports.
The Swiss Alpine village of Davos greet the world's political and corporate A-listers again, but it was not business as usual. There was no snow, no Russians, and fewer Chinese delegates, but plenty of rain and Ukrainians. The World Economic Forum is typically held in January under a blanket of snow. But after the 2020 event was canceled due to the COVID pandemic, this year's WEF was postponed until the spring. While the streets were wet, it was easier for delegates to get to and from the Congress Center and their hotels than usual. While the WEF returned as COVID restrictions fell in Europe, organizers did not take any chances and required participants to be vaccinated and tested before traveling to Davos. Arriving on site, delegates had to take another COVID test to be able to participate, and only 1% of attendees tested positive. The WEF decided to exclude Russians in the wake of Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. The forum usually focuses on economic and climate issues, but the war in Ukraine took center stage at the event, which was held under the theme History at a Turning Point. Myla Simbulan, Eagle News, Swarthmore, Pennsylvania.
Thanks, Myla. Back to the Uvalde shooting tragedy. Let's listen to a 9-year-old eyewitness account of the horrible day in an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. Plus, where the Texas governor is putting the blame on and why a resident thinks otherwise. These and more from Thomas Likeness on Correspondent at Large.
And now news and commentary from around the globe. Not a happy week to be a journalist. Another senseless tragedy in the United States, this time in Texas. A crazed gunman shot up an elementary school. It happened in the small community of Uvalde. 19 youngsters, 2 teachers dead. This is the second mass slaying in 10 days. It follows the gunplay at that grocery store in Buffalo, New York. That one left 10 people dead. You see it here on the screen. The heartache, the grieving over the losses. You hear the frustration about the lack of gun control. One can only imagine what the children who were in this school were feeling while that carnage was going on. This lad, he's only 9 years old, was a witness to the shooting. He can't be identified, but this is some of what he told reporters.
And then he came in and he crouched a little bit and he said it's time to die.
That's something no child should hear. Then you've got the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott. Abbott says access to guns is not the problem. He says his mental health.
So the ability of an 18-year-old to buy a long gun has been in place in the state of Texas for more than 60 years. And think about during the time over the course of that 60 years, we have not had episodes like this. And why is it that for the majority of those 60 years, we did not have school shootings? And why is it that we do now?
Abbott's words are meaningless to Uvalde resident Laura Dela Cruz. Dela Cruz believes easy access to guns is the problem.
And it's just really sad that we have to go through this. I'm saddened by that. I'm angry at our government for not doing more about gun control.
Public opinion polls suggest the majority of Americans feel the same way.
To me, it's really 2 factors. It's troubled kids, troubled young people, and guns. And every country has troubled young people to some extent, but not every country has a system where you can get guns so easily.
But don't expect federal legislation anytime soon to require background checks before gun purchases can be made in all states. I've listened to senators this past week. Most say any new legislation must protect the rights of law-abiding citizens to own firearms. I'm still trying to wrap my head around why the 18-year-old shooter in this week's tragedy needed an assault rifle. Every time there's a tragedy like this, the politicians send their thoughts and prayers to the survivors of the victims. But it's action, not thoughts and prayers, that's needed. And it seems the Senate is being held hostage by the gun lobby and the money it provides to election campaigns. Current measures are not working, but God forbid one law-abiding person be denied gun ownership, even if doing so keeps firearms out of the hands of crazed shooters who slaughter classrooms full of children. Once again, politicians show just how out of touch they are with reality. I'm saddened by all of this, but let's lighten it up before I leave you. Do any of you have fish as pets? and do you take those fish for walks? In Taiwan, Jerry Wong is out for a stroll with his goldfish. He invented this stroller, which is really a fishbowl on wheels. Cost him about $400 to put it together. It has battery-powered filtration and an oxygen system. Wong says, other pet owners take their dogs, cats, parrots, even reptiles for a walk. So why not people who have fish? He says he thinks the fish enjoy the outings. In fact, Wong says if he were a goldfish, he'd definitely be super thrilled if someone invented a thing for him to go explore other worlds. I'll be back in 7 days. In the meantime, I wish you all peace, joy, and happiness in the ensuing week. Thomas I. Likeness, Correspondent at Large, Eagle News.
Thanks, Thomas. Now let's head over to Australia. Our Queensland team speaks with voters there about what their expectations are of the land's newly elected leaders. Morgan Goodfellow reports on this week's Oceania at a Glance.
A week ago, Australian citizens over the age of 18 took part in the 2022 federal election, casting votes for the future of the country.
The Australian Parliament is made up of two houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate. In order to win government, a party needs to hold the majority of seats in the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives govern local areas, while the Senate governs states and territory. Whoever wins this year will determine who will govern Australia for the next 3 years. We spoke to some voters about what issues they wish to be addressed once new leaders are seated in office.
It's really got to be work in the Townsville region, to be completely honest. From what I understand, the unemployment rate's really high. Need to get more jobs up here. We've had a lot of Southerners move up during COVID and that sort of stuff. They've all got to have something to do. We don't really want our unemployment to skyrocket.
I think Labor's better on the economy. If you go back in history and have a look at both parties, major parties, they're equal standing. And if you want to go back even further to John Howard, they're the most spending government that's ever been in Australia.
Oh, the financial management of the country, most important. I think in a time coming out of COVID and the interest rates rising, we should stick with who we know.
I'd have to say corruption. It's systemic right throughout the whole political sphere. Once that's addressed, then everything can be fixed thereafter.
Only time will tell if these concerns will be dealt with and given appropriate and favourable responses. Morgan Goodfellow, Townsville, Queensland.
Thanks, Morgan. Monkeypox is suspected to have reached the city of Toronto in Ontario, Canada. What are health officials saying about it?
Toronto now has its first suspected case of monkeypox in the city. The individual, a man in his 40s, had recent contact with another individual who traveled to Montreal, Quebec. Montreal is the first city in Canada with the most recent confirmed cases of monkeypox. According to the Government of Canada, monkeypox is most often mild and most individuals who contract the virus recover on their own. It is rare that death occurs due to the illness. A warning, the images that will be shown may be disturbing to some viewers. Monkeypox is most often identifiable for its rash, lesions that often start on the face or extremities and last for 14 to 21 days. According to Public Health Ontario, transmissions often happen from animals to humans or person to person. The spread from the person to person happens when in contact with lesions, scabs, bodily fluids or secretions, and contaminated items. Contagion usually begins when the rash forms and until the skin heals completely. Dr. Theresa Tam, Canada's top doctor, reassures Canadians that although monkeypox, just like any other illness, is serious, the virus has limited spread compared to COVID-19, measles, or even the common flu. Yolanda Aspiras, Toronto, Ontario.
Back here in the United States, one of the top producers of peanut butter had to pull its products from the shelves. A salmonella outbreak linked to Jif peanut butter has been detected across the country. Roselle Feria in Washington has more.
14 people across 12 states have been reported to be infected with salmonella. 2 people have been hospitalized. 4 or 5 people interviewed reported eating different types of Jif brand peanut butter before getting sick. Although no deaths have been reported, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, says the true number of sick people is likely higher than the number reported. The health agency also says the outbreak may not be limited to the states with known illnesses because some people recover without medical care and are not tested for salmonella. On May 20, J.M. Smucker Company recalled multiple Jif brand peanut butter types, including creamy, crunchy, natural, and reduced fat. Recalled products include lot codes 127-4425-214-0425, with 425 at the end of the first 7 numbers. Most people infected with salmonella develop diarrhea, fever, and stomach cramps 6 hours to 6 days after being exposed to the bacteria. Children younger than 5, adults 65 and older, and people with weakened immune systems are more likely to have severe illnesses. The CDC warns that one must not eat, sell, or serve recalled Jif brand peanut butter. Throw it away. This product has a very long shelf life, so be sure to check any Jif peanut butter you have at home to make sure it has not been recalled. Contact a healthcare provider if you think you got sick from eating a recalled product. Roselle Feria, Washington, D.C., Eagle News.
Thanks, Roselle. Future graduates of the University of California can look forward to leaving their campuses with their diplomas in their hands and without any outstanding balances to pay. That's the goal of the university come 2030. Alex Skillman on this week's Learning Curve.
The University of California says by the end of the decade, it wants its students to be able to graduate debt-free. Graduates of bachelor degree programs end up owing an average of nearly $19,000 when they get their diploma. To achieve the debt-free goal by 2030, the university will encourage undergraduate students to rely on state and federal supports instead of student loans. As well, the university will offer part-time jobs to supplement government grants. Priority will be given to students from lower and middle-class families. Those jobs would be things like managing a campus restaurant, office work, or even career-related research. More than 280,000 students are registered at the various campuses of the University of California. The debt-free goal depends on the cooperation from the state legislature and the governor's office. The university also has to do its part to reach this goal. It has to come up with ways to cut costs. This could mean more online offerings and reducing staff through attrition. Alex Gilman, Eagle News, Los Angeles, California.
Thanks, Alec. Business correspondent Bobby Soriano reports on how South Korean mega conglomerate Samsung Group announces a $356 billion investment plan to remain at the forefront of technology and its competitors. Here's Mind Your Business.
South Korean conglomerate Samsung Group has unveiled a massive 450 trillion won or $356 billion investment blueprint for the next 5 years, aimed at making it a frontrunner in a wide range of sectors from semiconductors to biologics. The tech giant is South Korea's largest family-run conglomerate in the country, and its overall turnover rate is equivalent to a fifth of the national gross domestic product. Samsung Electronics, its flagship subsidiary, is the world's biggest smartphone maker. Samsung said in a statement that the investment plan would bring long-term growth in strategic businesses and help strengthen the global industrial ecosystem of crucial technology. The investment plan also mentions 80,000 new jobs that would be created primarily in core businesses, including semiconductors and biopharmaceuticals, through 2026. It also noted the investment would bring forward the mass production of chips based on the 3-nanometer process, the latest technology to further shrink the size of semiconductors and boost computing power. The new plan represents a 36% increase in investment over its total investments over the past 5 years. Of the 450 trillion won Samsung plans to spend, it will commit 360 trillion won to South Korea. The announcement comes after U.S. President Joe Biden toured one of Samsung Electronics' massive semiconductor factories, underscoring the South Korean giant's role in securing global supply chains of microchips. South Korea and the United States need to work to keep our supply chains resilient, reliable, and secure, Biden said, calling semiconductors manufactured there as a wonder of innovation and crucial to the global economy. Bobby Soriano, Mind Your Business, Eagle News, New York, New York.
Thanks, Bobby. May is National Foster Care Month, and today, let's get a glimpse of how communities in Texas are reaching out to foster kids and parents. Jane Kathleen Gregorio joins us again on this week's Community Care.
According to statistics from childwelfare.gov, over 407,000 children across the country are currently in foster care. Foster families play a vital role in caring for children in need of a safe and loving home. But being a foster parent is not always easy. They too need support. In honor of Foster Care Awareness Month, our story brings us across the state of Texas to learn about the various programs and organizations that support foster care families and children. Earlier this month, officials from the Texas Department of Family Protective Services, also known as DFPS, held a foster care event with local community partners in San Antonio, Texas.
That I'm consistently hearing is that the community recognizes the part that they have to play in keeping families together, and they want to play it. They don't feel obligated. They're asking us, how do we stand in that gap to support the work that you're doing to either, one, keep kids from ever coming into care, and when they are in care, how do we quickly get them home, and to put those supports around families to make sure we hold them together.
On May 13th, First Lady of Texas, Cecilia Abbott, hosted the Governor's Commission for Women at the Governor's Mansion in Austin for a Heart Gallery of Central Texas portrait viewing and discussion on foster care and adoption. As one of 11 regional galleries across Texas, the Heart Gallery of Central Texas, in collaboration with Partnerships for Children and DFPS, displays professional portraits of children who dream of finding their forever family in local communities. Meanwhile, in Corpus Christi, Texas, nonprofit organizations like Agape Ranch are building solutions for keeping foster siblings together and providing respite care for foster parents.
Agape Ranch is a 501c3 nonprofit here in the Coastal Bend supporting foster families and vulnerable children. May is Foster Care Awareness Month, and it's an opportunity to recognize all the different people that serve in the world of foster care. It's not just about the foster parents, but about teachers, policymakers, psychologists, just the many people that support foster families. Foster children are not bad kids. You know, people think like, oh, they must have done something and that's why they're in the foster care system. That's not really the case. It's most always because an adult that's a caregiver has made a really bad choice and now they have to be removed for their safety. The age requirement for to be a foster care parent is actually only 21 years old. A lot of people assume that you need to be older. A lot of people assume that you need to be married. You can be single, and as long as you're 21 years old, that is the age requirement. There is a process involved in being a foster parent. A lot of training, background check, criminal check, that we don't have enough foster care parents in the Coastal Bend. Actually our latest data, we have 398 children in Nueces County in foster care, and of that number, 171 of them had to be sent out because we don't have enough foster homes here. So the ranch neighborhood is going to be a neighborhood where even if I don't have enough beds in my home to take a sibling group, maybe the house 2 houses over or across the street will have beds. And so even if siblings can't be in the same home together, they'll be on the same street, in the same neighborhood, they'll see each other at the same school. We're fundraising to build all the homes. We have 1 home built right now, and we have already fundraised for house number 2 and house number 3. And the idea is to keep the rent reduced so that you know, it's kind of, there's an incentive to want to come and live in the neighborhood, but I think the biggest incentive is being in community with other foster families and other foster children so that you know that you're not alone. There are many ways to support foster families and vulnerable children. There's not just one way, and obviously I always say that the easiest is probably to donate money because you're supporting all of our programs, but I just want people to know that there's more that you can do than just donating money. Volunteering, being a respite care provider, and I say the top level is becoming a foster care parent.
Jane Kathleen Gregorio, Eagle News, Corpus Christi, Texas.
Thank you all for joining us again. If there are any stories or topics you want us to share with you, just comment below. View, like, share our other shows. City Limits with Alan Basiliaje, Connected with Dr. David. Take a seat and join us with Anna Cui. Plate Date with Mike Hudson and Friends, plus Journey, Stories of Filipinos in Canada with Kathleen Cruz. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at Eagle News Live. I'm Ralph Cornell. Happy weekend, everyone.